Well, everyone, back to the podcast Sweets with Sodi. Today, I'm super excited to have my guest here, Aaron Hale. Aaron is a Navy and Army veteran. He worked as a military chef and a team leader for the EOD team and is now a co-founder of EOD Confections. Aaron, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to get into this.
I'm super excited. I remember a couple years back, the first time I ever discovered you was actually from one of your Cooking Without Looking videos. And I loved it. I thought, okay, this is amazing. And so I followed from there, was watching, and then for a couple years I was off of social media. And now I am back on and kind of rediscovered you again. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how much I love these videos. And so I was super excited when I reached out to you and you responded back and said, yeah, let's do this. So I'm very excited to have you on the show today.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was kind of born out of the whole COVID quarantine era. We needed something to do, and we really needed to find a new marketing channel for our fudge company. So we started doing the TikTok videos. I had no idea about it, and I'm not very good with video, being blind and almost deaf. But my wife, being a few years younger than me and a little more hip on the social media, she just pointed a camera in my face, her phone in front of my face, and said, "Start talking." So some of the Cooking Without Looking, the EOD Confections, it was just me talking about a few things, and then sometimes it just kind of evolved into this cooking show, Aaron Hale's Cooking Without Looking. But of course, incredibly enough, with consistency, over about a year of that, we grew the following to over 150,000 followers. But of course, after COVID wave had kind of passed and real life was starting over again, it's really hard. It's really time consuming. It's amazing how much time it takes to produce a 60-second cooking show. But so when real life started again, we've got 3 boys. My wife is also a real estate agent. We have a real estate business as well as the fudge company. So it was a little bit difficult to produce a daily cooking show. Thankfully, we've carved out a little bit more time lately to at least do something about every week or so.
Yeah, I totally understand that with those, even if it's a 60-second video. Oh, it's hard because when I was in high school, I used to make those little videos, make them for my friends, put it on Instagram, and I still do some like that. But it's crazy because you think, okay, 60 seconds, that can be pretty easy. But then, it turns into a couple hours, you film and then you edit and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. You said you had 3 boys. What are their names?
The oldest is just a couple weeks away from turning 13. So we'll have our first teenager in the house. Wow. Yeah, that's Cameron. And we've got identical twins, 4.5-year-old Wyatt and Owen, identical, because I shouldn't be the only one that's confused.
I love that. That's great.
And they're just a pair of wrecking balls. It's a tank and dozer running through the house on a path of destruction.
It's got to keep everything lively. I love that. Well, Aaron, if you could give me just a quick kind of snapshot of what your childhood and growing up was like so I can get to know you a little bit better that way.
Of course. I grew up in the Midwest, Akron, Ohio. I had the Norman Rockwell type of, actually, the kind of upbringing that you would see right in one of those paintings. The town square, pie eating contests, hay rides in the autumn, and I loved growing up where I did, and with the friends I did. I have a wonderful family. However, I call myself the I would say, the all-American slacker. I didn't have a whole lot of work ethic, just enough natural talent and ability to get by without having to put a whole lot of effort in anything. And when I got to college, that quickly passed me by. All those people who knew how to work hard progressed where I stalled out. And that's when I knew that I needed to find some goals, to get those. I needed to achieve something, and I needed to gain those core values that made people successful. All right, I couldn't again get by any longer on a smile and BS. So I decided then and there that I would become a chef and I would go to culinary school, and I would really, I wouldn't, piss away the tuition the second time like I did the first, but then I needed to get that tuition back. So the military is where I went. I got the GI Bill. I was going to do 4 years in the Navy as a Navy cook. And then I would get out and go to culinary school and become chef. Only 8 years later, I found myself loving being in the service as a Navy cook. I was cooking for a 3-star admiral stationed in Italy. It was amazing. I was cooking for the admiral and his top staff. We would import. We were in Gaeta, Italy, and I would only serve breakfast and lunch, and I'd pack up, clean up the kitchen, the mess, and hang up my uniform, and I would be an Italian from say 2 o'clock in the afternoon on. And then when the ship went out to sea, we were doing breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and actually 4 meals with mid rations or midnight rations. We'd have shifts, but then we would be out to sea for 2 or 3 months and pull into 3 or 4 different ports all around the Mediterranean, the Eastern Atlantic. It was amazing. Hardship duty, it was not. On my, I went to France, Spain, Malta, Croatia, Slovenia, Turkey. We were all around. It was incredible. And when I was on my leave and liberty time, I would take trips to France, Paris for Valentine's Day, and Munich for Oktoberfest. Oh, wow, what an incredible cultural experience it was. And I learned quite a bit about the culinary arts. Only I joined in a time of peace, 1999. Mm-hmm. And soon we found ourselves in 2 wars. So I was far from the action, so to speak. Yes, everybody's job in the military is important. Everybody plays a key role, but I'd found myself, I'd gained those internal values, the hard work, that work ethic, and pride in achievement and accomplishment and all of that. But I accidentally picked up those external values like the teamwork, selfless service, pride and duty. And I was watching the war unfold on the news, CNN and Fox, just like everybody else was. And I decided that, I wanted to put my talents and abilities to a greater role, better work for the military and the mission. And that's when I decided to deploy to Afghanistan. I volunteered, and my first deployment was as a Navy cook running an Army chow hall. So I went from cooking for the Admiral and 35 of his staff to running this huge dining facility, feeding 700 NATO troops, including Italians, which is funny because I'm in the desert of Afghanistan speaking Italian that I'd picked up to these special forces guys out of Herat. But
I would love that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Plus, I got to trade MREs for Lavazza and Ely. So, yeah. So, but that's when I met some EOD technicians, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. That's the military's bomb squad. And I struck up a conversation with these guys. I learned all about the dangerous job they did diffusing uh, roadside bombs and unexploded ordnance, bombs that drop, or grenades or landmines that hadn't yet detonated. They're first responders on the battlefield, and everything about it told me that's what I needed to do. And I switched uniforms, went from the Navy to the Army, and I switched jobs, went from cook to bomb technician.
And from my understanding, you tried to switch from cook to bomb technician in the Navy, but then got denied and switched over to the Army.
Well, each branch has EOD technicians,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, I first put my request in through Navy channels to stay in the Navy because I believe I still have salt in my veins. Uh, I love being a sailor, love being in the Navy, but uh, my request was denied. I guess they liked my cooking too much. But the truth was that my rank and rank, of course, my position, but rate is that specific job qualification, cook. So both my rank was undermanned in that rate. So cooks, petty officer, second class, there weren't enough of them, and there were too many at the next rank up. So they didn't want me to leave the job field, and they also weren't going to promote me. So I could either stay on in the branch I loved, in a job I did love, but I wouldn't be feeling the love back for a while. Or if I really wanted to pursue, if I was destined to become an EOD technician, then I'd have to find another avenue. And of course, everything can be, the decision could have been changed with a waiver request, but nobody wants to tell you. So when I got back off the deployment, my contract in the military was coming to an end. And I decided instead of re-enlisting, I would just take my service record over to an Army recruiter, and they welcomed me in very quickly. I mean, of course, 2 wars going on. They needed at the time they needed all the good Joes they could get. I was a seasoned non-commissioned officer that wanted to go defuse bombs. Of course, I had a great service record after that, and they welcomed me on, let me keep my rank. So I went from petty officer, second class, to sergeant.
That is awesome. That is so cool. I love how you saw that need and you wanted to do more to help other people, and so you kind of took into your own hands to do that. And I want to get more into that in a little bit, but I also want to ask. So it really intrigues me that you were able to spend a lot of time in Italy. You went to all these ports and had the opportunity to really grow and learn that way. And I wanted to know, how does that influence your cooking and your baking now?
You know, it isn't about the specific measurements in a recipe. It's about the methodology, right? It's about the technique in the recipes. So when you talk about uh, a certain region's type of cooking, it's how they make something and perhaps the ingredients they put in there. But it's not about the specific dosages. So when I traveled around, and especially in Italy itself, is that Italy, a lot of people don't realize, is a younger country than the United States. Italy only became a full country in mid 1800s, and before then, it was all city states and regions. So if you wanted, in the cuisine reflects this, because if you don't go to Milan for a pizza, a traditional Italian pizza,
Mhm.
you go to Naples, right? And that's why so much of the Italian food is called bolognese, because it came from Bologna, and Parmigiana is from Parma. I mean, the food style is named after the region, and that's a lot of what I found in Italy was they don't have the big supermarkets that we have in the United States, and a lot of their stuff they don't do the the highly processed and preserved foods that we have in the U.S. So much of the food is straight out of the mercado, the open air markets, and fresh. They use a lot of fresh ingredients, and it's well, for lack of a better word, very refreshing. And their techniques are simple. I think what we try to make up for what's lost in the processing of our foods. We try to make up for that with extra ingredients and spice, and heavy on the salts and sugars. And they don't need that to make it absolutely incredibly delicious.
I love that. Yeah, I think I was talking um, to a chocolatier a couple weeks ago from Germany, and he was telling me how in Germany they have these high regulations of what can go in their food. So usually it's higher quality because you're not getting all these added preservatives and bad things. And I'm sure that's a lot of other places in Europe, kind of like Italy too. It's just
Mm-hmm.
simple, delicious, and it's not all this extra junk that doesn't need to be in there. And I think that's what the beauty of all of that European style of cooking and baking is it's pure and it's just delicious.
Yeah, when it comes to chocolates, it's incredible to learn about the chocolate making process and the differences therein when it comes to German or Swiss or Danish or Italian or Spanish chocolates.
Yep.
The processes are different. Who likes to add a little bit more sugar traditionally than others, or who like on a base level by geography are just a little bit different than the others. And having taken that chocolatier course, uh, I gain that newfound appreciation by learning how things can be different.
I know, yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things is those little nuances that make it different and those things that can change uh maybe a chocolate from being okay, this is good to oh wow, this is amazing. Just those little tiny things. So I think that is super cool. I think that is. It just sounds like it's a dream that you were able to live being in Italy and trying all of that. And I think that is so cool that it's still affecting you today in the way that you're living, you're cooking and baking. And I think that's super cool. I personally want to travel and see more of the world and what the culinary and pastry world has to offer. And so Italy is definitely a place that's on my list that I want to go see.
It's funny about travel and tourism. I, I, I broke it down to somebody once, and I was like, "What do you do when you go to travel to some far off place? You go look at things, you go shopping for things, and you eat things." And for me, I might not be able to go and look at things, and I don't mind the shopping part, but I'm not real keen on that. But I've always loved eating my way through a new a new city or a new country that I haven't been before. And when I was stationed in Italy, uh, Rome was only about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hour train ride from Naples, and I was there maybe every other weekend when I wasn't working. And one of my favorite things to do was find a new location on in Rome. It's a huge city, and just get lost. And the whole point was to wander around till we found a bar, a cafe, a trattoria, a ristorante, and literally eat our way around town. And every single time, I would say that place is amazing, and we got to remember how to get back to this place, and could never find it again. But it is part of the it was part of the magic of it, was that you find this little tiny place that made the most amazing type of pasta, or the most incredible soup, or something that, like, I'd never even thought of doing something in that manner, or add those ingredients, or something about it was just so amazing. We have to come back and share this with our friends, and then could never remember what street it was on, or what little corner it was tucked around. And maybe that was added to the allure of doing the next trip. We got to find another place just as good as that, and we always did.
I love that. That is, see, that gets me so excited to go and explore and just see what the world has to offer, because there's so many, I guess you like a hole in the rock kind of places that are just amazing and just delicious, that you would never have that chance to if you didn't, like you said, just get lost a little bit and take that chance to go find those great places. I love that so much.
Well, I tell you what, I think that's why I run so much. I haven't. It's like the chicken or the egg. I love to run, and I love to eat. And I think I started running the ultra marathons because I take in so many calories. But I take in so many calories because I need them for all the miles I run. But it's a symbiotic relationship.
That's awesome. Well, Aaron, flash forward. So now you have just enlisted in the Army and you are doing your training for EOD. What was that training kind of like when you transferred over to the Army?
Well, it's definitely, for one, the Army and the Navy are completely different animals, right? Different languages. It's so funny. I was talking to somebody a long time, just a day ago, about how many different definitions. The Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they all have a different definition for the word secure.
Hmm.
There's a joke behind that, but I don't want to take all the time. Um, so all of the branches send their EOD students to the same school to learn together, because this is the kind of job where you don't want the differences in language to confuse people. So I, I, in Explosive Ordnance Disposal, EOD is like its own brotherhood within its own fraternity within the military, almost like the special operations community. And I went from being a Navy cook into the Army, but I went immediately into EOD, and I didn't go through the indoctrination of becoming a soldier. So it was almost like I was a sailor in the wrong uniform, uh, becoming an EOD technician. I did come to appreciate the Army, and did take quite a bit of pride in wearing the Army uniform. Uh, but first and foremost, I became an EOD tech. And one of the things they do just to test to see if you have what it takes to be taught how to be an EOD technician is the bomb suit test. They put that 90-pound armored suit on with a big bubble helmet, and then they run you through basically a physical test. And it's not just a physical fitness test, but then after you're good and smoked, they start asking you questions to test your mental acuity. So brain teasers, memory questions, that kind of thing, while you're sweating and huffing and puffing in this heavy bomb suit, because that's what we're going to run into. And we got to be able to prove that we can keep our wits about us while we're at our physical worst. And that was my that was my test to get into the school and start learning how to be an EOD technician. And then they tell you at the schoolhouse, this is just the 1 year of training at the schoolhouse is to teach you how to learn how to be an EOD technician, because the real learning happens at your unit. So it's there's a high attrition rate. There's so much knowledge. There's hundreds of thousands of different types of munition that have been produced by all the different countries for millennia. And it definitely takes a level of competence. And then, of course, the competence comes as you train and you learn and you study. So everything that's been dropped, thrown, shot, fired, buried, or in recent decades, made up with household goods, the IED, the improvised explosive device. So anything that you can think of or you can conjure up in your mind that goes boom, that's what we as EOD technicians deal with.
Wow. Yeah, that is super cool to kind of see. I mean, that definitely is a very long training process, but definitely very needed because of the job. And I mean, that takes a lot of courage and bravery to go out and do that, and to really take that extra time to understand and learn all of that. And so I have a lot of respect for you for doing all of that, and doing that to keep others like me safe. And so thank you. That is awesome.
I think you and your listeners will appreciate this. I didn't abandon the culinary arts altogether, because when I got deployed to Afghanistan for the second time, I built this. It was like a mud brick pizza oven in the back of our hooch. So out back of our tent, Afghanistan is full of grape rows and poppy fields and marijuana fields, and I actually joined a team that built a whole new base. So I followed these dozers as they plowed over some abandoned grape rows, and filled up these big, they're huge baskets, like 7-foot baskets of earth to build the walls around the base, and then dropped gravel all around the inside, and we had this base. But all around the gravel were all these roots and vines of the former grape field that was there. So I collected all up, and then I go over to my pizza oven, and I wrote an email to King Arthur Flour, and they sent out pizza flour, pizza mix, seasoning mix, flour, just plain, all-purpose flour and leavener, yeast, all that kind of stuff, and even a pizza stone, and a mini, short-handled pizza peel. And there I was on the middle of deployment, in the middle of the desert, cooking pizza with toppings I stole from the chow hall. And I would bring these big loaves of the artisan sourdough into the headquarters tent, and they go, "Where did you get that?" Don't worry about it. Here, welcome. I'd share some fresh baked bread with the night watch standers. Where's there a bakery around here? So that was fun.
That is so cool. I love that. The fact that you got that, all of them, King Arthur sending all of that. And I'm sure everyone just loved you for that. That is awesome.
That was one of the big things I definitely learned as a cook in the Navy, was that food is a huge morale boost or a morale killer in the military. Napoleon said an army marches on its belly. And it's true. So little things like fresh baked bread in this deployment, where they get a lot of these young soldiers were getting care packages from back home with Swedish fish and Twizzlers and stuff like that. And I thought I could do better. I just make this. It was for me on my off time. I needed something to do, and you can only play so many video games or watch bootleg movies or whatever there is to do in your downtime. So I got to work. The mud bricks. That's how they built their villages in this area. So I just made some bricks and sun dried them. and just put this thing together, and it took me a little while, but soon I was baking, and I was sharing it with the small base that I had, and it was definitely you could tell it was a welcome surprise to the people, fellow soldiers.
I love that so much. That is amazing. So, Aaron, I believe it's so in 2011, you go out onto to recover some parts of, I believe it was an IED that exploded, and then this is actually where you end up losing your hearing and your vision. Can you kind of walk me through what happened that day?
Yeah, I had just come back from my 2 weeks of R&R leave, vacation time. For every 1 year of deployment on the battlefield, a service member is required to take 2 weeks off of the battlefield. So I was on a 1 year rotation in Afghanistan, and it was about almost exactly this time. Mid to late. It was actually late November in 2011, and I went back stateside to see my firstborn turn 1. I got to witness the whole family gather around at the Thanksgiving table and give thanks. And I love Thanksgiving, especially for the reason for the holiday. Gather everybody around and talk about what you're grateful for, and also because you get to eat like an absolute glutton. But I got to see all of this, and it was the best last page in the photo album in my head I could imagine, I could ever wish for. So I flew back to Afghanistan to resume my duty, and my team had collected me from the airfield in our armored truck, and we jumped into a supply convoy to head back out to our area of operation, or AO. And along the way, the convoy commander called back to our truck and said, "EOD, there's an IED on the side of the road, and there's a QRF, or quick response force, nearby in the area, and that it's their responsibility. I'm not yet on duty, but we're in the battlefield, and there's an EOD tech in the convoy. So we said, we'll take care of it." And they set up a security cordon, a circle of protection around us, and we got to work. My team, threw my luggage off of the robot, and the robot out of the truck, and it got to work. and it found what we'd been finding like 98% of the time out there. They're not very creative. It was a jug, an oil, like a vegetable oil jug full of homemade explosive with a little blasting cap connected by lamp cord to a 9-volt battery, and the switch just being a couple pieces of plywood, a pressure plate. And that it would just bury that everywhere. If you can imagine, one guy put it very poignantly, in Afghanistan at that time of the war, every step you take was a deliberate act. Um, and there I was, the robot had ripped it apart, but it couldn't get the jug out of the hardpack irk. And I wanted to get as much evidence as I could, because we do send this to ATF, CIA, FBI, and all those other agencies, intelligence agencies, to analyze, the fingerprints and the chemical makeup and all that. The EOD is also the CSI on the battlefield. So I wanted to get these guys before they dropped any more of these things into the earth. So I started making my approach. I had a metal detector in one hand, my evidence kit in the other hand. I was about 20 meters or so from the primary device when a secondary device that hadn't yet been detected detonated right under me. And that punted me into the air. I landed on my knees and elbows. My lights had gone out, but I was still lucid, more or less. I was still conscious, I guess. But my bell had been seriously rung. I thought my helmet had actually gotten pushed over my face. That's why I couldn't see. And I wanted to get back in the fight. And a lot of times what happens is, after an IED goes off, they do what's called a complex ambush, and they start, while everybody's focused in on that blast and the confusion happens, then they start shooting with small arms. Well, I wanted to make sure that everybody was, on mission. I wanted to get back into the fight. So before fixing my helmet, I did this functions check, wiggle the fingers and toes and knees and elbows, make sure everything was more or less still there. So I reached up to get my helmet, just to find out that the helmet was gone. And that's when I thought, oh no, this is bad. My first sergeant's going to kill me for losing that. But I realized I had taken damage, and the next thing that was supposed to happen is my team, they're trained to clear a safe path into the downed team leader so that the medics can get me out. I didn't want anybody to come into a potentially dangerous situation. So I got on my feet and I started walking back towards the truck. Only problem was I had no idea where the truck was anymore. So I'm just walking around like a zombie out on the battlefield, potentially make it even worse, but I wasn't thinking. My team dragged me back to the truck, and within, I think it was like 14 minutes, the medevac chopper was picking me up and taking me right back to that airfield we just left. Within 48 hours, I was in Bethesda, Maryland at Walter Reed Medical Center. And they were breaking the news to me that I would never be able to see again.
Wow. That, I couldn't imagine. That must have been really hard. And just, it's what stands out to me is throughout this whole time, you're thinking of the other people and trying to figure out how to keep them safe and ways that you can prevent things like this happening again. And I think that is just something super important and heroic to that you're doing. And then now you are in the hospital and seeing that you're not going to be able to see anymore. And how did you cope with that after?
Success or the right attitude doesn't instantly just happen. Right? I was in that hospital bed, and what I call my demons, the little voices in the head that say, you can't do this, it's too hard. The what ifs and the why me's start pop in your head, all those questions, all those things. Like, what if I'd done something differently? What if I'd taken my leave time at a different time and I wouldn't be here exactly at this point? Or what if I'd taken a different approach to collect evidence? What if I just dropped had the robot drop a charge of C4 and just get rid of it, and I could have told the analysis team it was too dangerous to approach. What if all these things? But it doesn't matter. Those are all the questions that can never be answered, and they don't. It doesn't matter because it's past tense. And then it was, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't be a husband anymore. I can't be a soldier. I definitely can't be an EOD technician. They won't even let colorblind guys into the field. Red wire, blue wire. I don't know. But that's another thing. Saying I can't cuts off imagination. It shuts the door on opportunity, and it limits so much potential. So I had to get those demons, those voices, to shut up and change the questions. It led to that downward spiral of despair and self-defeat. And I thankfully had incredible team and training with the military. I was taught a ton of resilience while on active duty, being in the military, and the famous or infamous saying of "embrace the suck." Right? It's going to be terrible, but the mission still has to go on. And General Jim Madison, his book Call Sign Chaos, is he says, at least in the Marines, things being hard were never a good excuse for mission failure. And okay, so it was hard and it sucked, and I had to ask myself, well, what now? What then? Okay, it sucks. Now what? And I have a terrific family, very incredible mother who's very optimistic and been through a terrible tragedy with my younger brother, who had been in a horrible roadside construction, like a freeway accident, and was permanently disfigured. And so she comes into the hospital room. Hi, honey. And the first thing I could think of was, I'm so sorry, Mom. I did this to your other son. Right? And she says, oh, sweetheart, this is not my first rodeo. We'll be fine. And I mean, I had the support in my family. I had that training and that mental resilience. And then I thought of all of the people that I was responsible to, not just for. I was a husband, father, son, grandson, brother. And I also still a soldier and also a sailor at heart. And there were all these warriors up and down the halls of Walter Reed. They were all fighting their own battles, their own personal wars, and they weren't giving up. Who was I to give up because I'd gotten injured and things were hard? I had to continue the mission, and I had to move forward. And I was responsible to all of them. It was my ethical imperative to be the absolute best me I could be. And I decided right then and there, if I was going to be blind for the rest of my life, I was going to be the best damn blind person I could be. And then I just got to work.
I love that. That's so cool. I think it's great and amazing that you have that awesome support from your family and that strength that your mom had to say, hey, it's going to be okay. Not my first rodeo. We'll get through this. And then for you to have that mindset to continue to grow and become the best that you can be. And after that, you did like marathons. You were just talking about how you did ultra marathons. You also kayaked, hiked, and did all of these things that normally a blind person wouldn't be doing. But you, like you said, you're going to be the best blind person you can. And you went out and did all these amazing things. And to me, that's super inspiring. Did that help you also to continue to just overcome that challenge of going out and doing these things that normal people couldn't do?
Well, I had to change the questions. Instead of saying I can't, I said, how can I? Just okay. The parameters of the situation have changed. So how do I change to continue forward? So maybe I know there's a great example I use is in EOD, bomb squad. In the army, we had like a 3-person. We go in 3-person teams, team leader and 2 team members, and we have this huge shipping container full of tools to fight all those things that explode, from nuclear weapons to landmines. Then we have hazmat suits and chemical decontamination kits and power tools and bomb suits and robots, and they all go with us to battle whatever potential hazards there might be on the battlefield. And once we get to our place of duty, we get that armored truck I mentioned. It's smaller than the shipping container, and we can't take all the tools we have with us. So we do a bit of a triage where we leave behind the stuff we're least likely to encounter, like stuff to combat nuclear weapons. All right. We have them, we know where they are, but we have to leave them behind. And then we pack that truck tight as best we can, just in case. But then in Afghanistan, there were no roads. There were like dirt goat trails. They couldn't take any vehicles, so most of our missions were dismounted or they were on foot, and we had to pack our rucksacks with whatever we could stand to carry over miles of hiking through the desert and these villages. And it ended up being a few blocks of C4, like a roll of rope, carabiners, and food, right? MREs, water. And what we carried with us was our training, our creativity, our imagination. We still had to face whatever piece of ordnance or IEDs we came across our path. We still had to do it. Mission still had to continue, but we couldn't worry about the tools we left behind. We still had a job to do, and that's how I faced the rest of my life. Was I had to leave some tools behind. I still got to move forward. I still have a job to do. I still have a role to play and a mission to continue.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. So after a while, from my understanding, it was Thanksgiving again, and you started making fudge, and that's kind of where EOD Confections kind of started. What year was that, and how did that happen?
Well, I'd been blind for about 4 years, and I was, like you said, I'd been making a pretty decent go of it. I'd started running marathons, whitewater kayaking, climbing mountains, and I was telling my story about success through struggle and triumph because of tragedy or through the tragedy. And what I didn't mention was when the bomb blast took my eyes, it also cracked my skull. And I'd originally been leaking spinal fluid right through my sinuses out my nose. And they'd patched it up, but I suppose it hadn't been completely patched. So there was always a small leak and an opening, and a path out is also a pathway in. And 4 years later, in 2015, I contracted bacterial meningitis and put me right back in the hospital. I woke up from a nap one day when I was totally fatigued, and I was actually feeling dizzy. It was very strange. So the only thing I could think of was just to lay down for a nap. And when I awoke, who knows how much later, I had this splitting migraine. Doesn't do it justice. It was like somebody poured acid in my ears. And I called 911. It was kind of funny because to think back, the operator said, state the nature of your emergency. And I said, ma'am, I have the a very bad headache. And to her credit, she said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain? And I said, ma'am, I've never felt a pain like this in my life, and I've literally been blown up. No, so she said the ambulance was on its way, and thankfully the hospital nearby is only a mile and a half from me. So I got picked up quickly, and I passed out on the way. Woke up became lucid 4 days later. My mom was by my side. She'd flown down from Ohio. My girlfriend, who had just left, but was actually, it was a brand new relationship. She was still living in California, was right back by my side. And I'm like, how did you guys get here so fast? I didn't know it had been 4 days. But the meningitis was trying to kill me. Was trying to destroy my brain, and in the process was stealing what was left of my hearing that the blast hadn't taken. And I could still hear, but it sounded like I was underwater. Everything was very distant, very muffled, very faint. And when the doctor told me what was going on, and that very soon I'd be completely deaf, I said, doctor, you say I'm going to be 100% blind and I'm going to be 100% deaf? Are you telling me I'm never going to have to pretend to pay attention ever again? But there's the bright side to everything. Silver lining. It must have been how far gone my ears were already, but I didn't hear my girlfriend or my mom laugh at that joke.
It's all right. You got a good laugh on me. That was funny. I like that.
But yeah, I was going to be deaf in just days. And there was a chance I'd be able to regain some hearing with the cochlear implant, but it would take over 6 months. It would in almost before I could hear anything. And it would be nearly a year before I could actually have a conversation like we're having right now.
Wow.
And it was, I came home and I actually lost my inner ear balance also, that vestibular balance. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't get on my treadmill to train. I came home in a wheelchair and I was sitting at my breakfast bar, actually holding on to it so I didn't fall off the stool. Feeling very sorry for myself again, right? I was right back, and it was asking, those demons came back with a vengeance, right? Why me, right? Mm-hmm. Again, when have I paid my dues? When has this soldier had his fair share, right? When's enough? Yeah. And of course, those questions have no answer. So my family around me, the training, and it was this sardonic humor of mine. It was like the powers that be, the Almighty, God had a similar type of humor. And I've been for 4 years talking about this, success, through hardship. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, prove it. Put your money where your mouth is. Do it again. and I was thinking in my imaginary conversation to him, jerk. So that's what I had to do. And the holidays were coming up. Thanksgiving was around the corner. And I decided I was just we were going to throw the biggest feast ever, right? I was going to do a bird in the smoker, do one in the oven, maybe deep fry one. I don't know. I love deep fried turkey. And I started baking. I was making cakes and pies and cookies and just putting them in the freezer. I started weeks in advance. And I started making fudge. And I actually, truthfully, never was a big fudge fan. Mm-hmm. The old traditional way was it almost takes kind of a gritty, that the sugar crystallization process. For me, I'm not a big fan, so I dumped a ton of chocolate But once I fixed the recipe, I would make a batch and then I would set it aside and I'd get started with another, just a different flavor, and I would try something else and I would set that aside, and then I was doing like nuts and spices. I was going to the liquor cabinet and dump it in a little one, and I uh, Michaela, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, said she noticed two things. One was a smile on my face that she hadn't seen in 6 months. The other thing she noticed was the fudge was piling up. So I made more fudge than any family gathering could have finished in one sitting. So she started sneaking it out the front door. Like, you've got to be real stealthy around a blind deaf guy. But she started giving it away, neighbors, friends, and lo and behold, some were impressed, and they started coming back and asking if they could buy some from us for birthday party, baby shower, stuff like that. And the capitalist in me said, "Well, of course you may." And all of a sudden, Extraordinary Delights Confections was born. EOD Fudge.com. We went the online route because the idea of doing like a brick and mortar, or me standing behind uh, um, a register all day, it sounds like my kind of nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, I loved the cooking, and it gave me something I could do. And at one point, after the implant and months of tuning it in and getting it just right, I was cooking. I was making fudge, and I accidentally hit the wooden spoon against the pot, and I heard this ting that literally sounded like a wooden spoon against a steel pot. And I hit it again, and I hit it again. And it sounded like it was supposed to sound, except, like I explained to you before, kind of like filtered through a phone's, a speaker phone. But it sounded recognizable. And I yelled to Michaela, like, "Listen to this. It sounds like a pot, a spoon against a pot." And she's like, "Yeah, I know." And then it dawned on her what I just said. She's like, "It does." And before I knew it, I was like a toddler that ripped out dumped out all the pots and pans on the floor. I'm like playing drums, bang, 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 with everything. I'm like, that sounds like a saucepan, and that sounds like, and yeah, I was learning to hear again, and at the same time, I was also learning to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
I took the trekking poles that I used to take up in the mountains. I used those as makeshift like crutches and antennae to feel my way forward, and I would just do this like daddy long legged walk all the way to my mailbox and back, and that would be exhausting. But then I'd do it again, and then I'd go a little bit further, and I'd walk down to the next driveway and back, and before I knew it, I was walking again. And then I got my treadmill, and I just hit the quick start button, which is half a mile an hour, and I would hold on for dear life with like the G.I. Joe kung fu grip, and I would just walk. And then when I got comfortable with that, I'd hit the arrow up button, one beep, and I would just keep going. And within a year of losing my hearing and my balance, I was running my hometown of Akron, Ohio. I was running the hometown marathon, and I got the fastest time I'd ever logged out in a 26.2 mile race. And it had just happened to be my high school 20th reunion. So that was a nice little touch to come into that reunion.
That is awesome. I just love that imagery of you sitting there with all the pots and pans and going to town, drumming away, and it just brings a smile to my face when you were saying that. That is so cool.
You gotta celebrate the little wins, right? There's a book called The Gap in the Game, right? And it's if you're always looking for, even for high achievers, if you're always achieving and just moving the goalpost forward, eventually you're going to burn out, right? You've got to look in the rear view every once in a while and appreciate the incremental process, your progress from where you were to where you are now. Because I always feel like we're not moving anywhere because we're always exactly right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
But where did we come from, and how did we grow, and how did we learn? What have we achieved up to now? And I had to take a moment. I could say even to today, right? I could be bitter about how terrible my hearing is and how my eyeballs still haven't grown back or whatever. But that moment, that one little sound on the pot, it was monumental, and I wanted to celebrate it, and it was huge.
I love that so much. Finding joy in those little things, I think that's will take anyone far in life being able to have that opportunity. And so we have EODconfections.com or fudge.com. And how many flavors do you guys currently have, and what is your favorite flavor?
Well, I have at least 50 different flavors of fudge, but we realized very quickly that we had to keep it simple because that's 100 different labels, different boxes, different. So we have our 6 favorite flavors, not my favorite flavors, but our customers' favorite flavors. But I got my top favorite recipe snuck in, and that's American Pick Me Up. And it's a throwback to my time in Italy because it's a fudge homage to the tiramisu, which literally means pick me up. Tirare mi su, pick me up. And it's because it's got the espresso, the alcohol, the cocoa, it's got all the good stuff. And what I did with the fudge is we had 2 layers. We got a white chocolate top layer with, instead of Frangelico or Amaretto, good old bourbon, Kentucky bourbon cream. And instead of hazelnuts, Georgia pecans. And then the base layer is a dark chocolate, and instead of espresso, it's I even found a coffee roaster, American Pride Coffee. So that's probably my favorite.
I love that. The American Pick Me Up. That is so cool. That is, I mean, just to see the journey in your story, to kind of the progression to where you're at now, and finding this joy in those little things, and then also starting your fudge company and being able to make a difference in people's lives. Because I'm a true believer that food can really change someone's life, bring a lot of joy. Kind of like how you were saying earlier with the army. It's either helps you on a high note or it brings you down on a low note. And I'm so thankful for you taking this time to be able to talk with me today. And one of the questions I like to ask everyone at the end, excuse me, is what's one thing that you've learned that has impacted your life the most?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What is one thing you learned that's impacted you the most?
The one thing that has impacted me the most, the one thing that has affected my life the most for the better would be the change in perspective from selfish pursuit or self-improvement, a focus on me, to selfless service, to giving giving to others more than I expected in return. And it has enriched my life more than I could have possibly done if I'd not shifted my focus. So I give and I give and I give without expectation of reciprocal return. I am open to return. I don't expect it immediately. And so this has made my life both figuratively and literally richer.
I love that so much, that focus on serving other people. And I can tell it's brought a lot of joy to your life. And that's a big part of your character. Aaron, you just have this personality that is just kind of, in a way, I guess, magnetizing. It draws people in. I've loved the last little bit being able to talk with you, and it's just brought joy into my life today. As you're cracking jokes or laughing, I'm getting to know you. And so, again, thank you so much. And we're going to add into the show notes the link to eodfudge.com, to your social media and everything like that. And also to your podcast, Power of Impact. And we'll have that on there so people can go check that out too. I've been listening to it and I've been loving it. And just, again, thank you so much for joining me today. And all of our viewers and listeners out there, don't forget to listen in. Go check out Aaron's podcast too, and leave a review. Everything helps. But thanks for being here, Aaron.
Well, thanks for having me, Drew. This is a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode with my special guest, Aaron Hale. I'm going to leave down in the show notes below where you can find him, so please go check him out. He's awesome. I had a great time with him. It made me laugh a ton. And don't forget to like, rate, and review the podcast. Share it with your mom, your friends, your family, your sister, even your dog. The more people that know about this podcast, the better it'll help me grow, and we can get more cool people just like Aaron here on the podcast. But until then, I hope you have a sweet rest of your day.